Hi guys, my name's Erin. I'm with Southern California News Group and Bay Area News Group. I'm helping out today. We're going to get through this. We're going to start here in about a minute or two. We are just about, a minute out. We're going to go ahead and let some more of the subscribers join in. So if you guys can just hold on for a minute, that would be great. Just also so that you guys know, we are going to go and use the Q&A button for if anyone has any questions for today's conversation. So please go ahead and use that Q&A button right at the bottom kind of toolbar of your Zoom link, as well as if you have any other comments that you'd like to send us, we would be happy to hear from you. So please use the chat feature to do that. And like I said, we're going to get started here in about a minute. So just hold on tight and we'll be right back. All right, folks, we are getting ready to start. Again, those of you who have just joined, please go ahead and use that Q&A feature for any questions that you do have during this conversation. And then if you have any other comments, please go ahead and use that chat feature. We're here, we're getting started. So I'm gonna go ahead and introduce you to Samantha Dunn, and she's gonna go ahead and take this conversation away. Thank you.
Thank you, Erin. Okay, I'm not muted, right? Y'all can hear me? All right, good. And thank you, everybody, our valued subscribers and everybody else who's joined us for this salon-style conversation about books and ideas. I just want to say we're grateful for you because without you, we couldn't do events like this. Right now, I would like to introduce my partner in crime, the hostess with the mostest for this show, the NPR commentator, brilliant novelist, and Atlantic columnist, you name it, she does it, Sandra Tsing Loh. Hello, Sandra.
Hello, but I don't clean my house, as you can see behind me, but everything else is true, okay? Well, it's so good to see you, Samantha, as we turn to this very SoCal, Southern California topic this week of the adaptation from page to stage to streaming. And like California, Southern California has a long history with this, don't we?
Does. Look at F. Scott Fitzgerald, Dorothy Parker, Faulkner, you name it, they all came for riches on the silver screen. But as we know, it doesn't always go.
Don't you have a story about that, Samantha?
I do, in fact. Do you remember when my memoir, Faith and Carlos Gomez, was making the rounds at Hollywood? And
it was making the rounds. You were making the rounds, yes.
The rounds.
Many meetings.
The producer with, the meeting with the producer, and he says, that part where the horse dies, that was really emotional. Everybody loved it. But frankly, audiences have a hard time with animals who die. So what about your mother? Could we kill your mother? Story. So I walked out of the meeting. I immediately called my mother and I said, Mom, how are you feeling? Needless to say, the movie did not get made, but
I love is, prose writers that we have, apparently America does like movies where animals die sometimes, as we'll see, and come back to life, as we'll see when we get
to that today.
Deeper into our show. But you have to say, like, my favorite rendition of The Writer's Life is certainly The Shining with Jack Nicholson. Everyone loves that, where he goes to a mountain retreat to get some quiet and write, and ends up typing, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy, and ends up going after his family with a hatchet.
Yes.
Not that I've done that, but again, that's the beauty of menopause. You don't remember.
That's it. Remember. Now you're starting to sound like Barton Fink. I'll show you the life of the mind.
Yes, exactly. Well,
so the writers we're featuring today aren't just living in the Chateau Marmont, I don't think, and phoning it in. No. They're right here in Los Angeles, going back and forth between different forums. So.
Yes, and they've been doing that very successfully, and we're going to learn some of their secrets. So on that note, as in the Great British Baking Show, I'm going to say, bye-bye, Samantha. Go to your tent We'll see you later in the program. And let's go directly to our first brilliant guest, Janelle Brown. I will do the 30-second download while Janelle listens, and then she can correct me if I've gotten anything wrong. Okay. So Janelle Brown is the author of 4, count them, 4 New York Times best-selling novels: Watch Me Disappear, All We Ever Wanted Was Everything, This Is Where We Live, and her newest, Pretty Things. A story of 2 wildly different women, and we're going to hear a little bit more about that. When a grifter, when an heiress, they're brought together by the scam of a lifetime. It made news even before it dropped in April, when Variety reported that it was being developed for a series on Amazon by someone named Nicole Kidman. Oh, we've heard of her. Intriguingly, Janelle is that multi-talented writer that can write from both, on both forms, you know, both the kind of novels and then adapted to the screenplay. So, so we're going to talk more about that. Welcome, Janelle.
Hello, it's lovely to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. So if we can start, there's so much to talk about. If you could just tell our viewers just about your journey as a writer. How did you start? What was your original inspiration?
From the very, very beginning, or for
wherever you wish. Wherever you're.
I've been a writer for so long, it's hard to even remember when I started. I mean, I know that at one point in first grade, when I was writing little books, my teacher said, "Oh, you should be an author when you grow up." And I took that to heart, like she really, like it was a serious suggestion, and I ran with it, much to my parents' dismay. They're like, "Why couldn't she suggested she'd be a doctor or a lawyer? Why novelist?" But yeah, I mean, I spent you know, I went to UC Berkeley, and I spent the first, you know, decade after I graduated from college working in journalism. So I worked at Wired magazine on their kind of online news side from like 95 to 98 during the kind of early boom years. And then I moved over to Salon, and I was there for a long time before I went freelance and you know, did a lot of stuff with the New York Times and Vogue and so on, and tried to write novels. And I sold my first novel, All We Ever Wanted Was Everything, in 2008. It was when it was published. And now I'm on book 4, and I've been doing that, you know, predominantly ever since. So
when you said you were trying to write novels, how long were you trying to write novels? I think it's always interesting for people to learn how long you just don't like wake up and boom. How long did it take you to write your first novel, and what did you learn along the way?
Well, let's see. I took my first intro to novel writing class, which I really did. I went to, you know, had been a journalist. I knew how to write journalism, but I hadn't really done any fiction in any kind of serious way, and I never got an MFA. So when I was kind of leaving journalism, I went and I took a UC extension class at the UCLA in 2002 called Writing the Novel, and that was 2002. And in 2007, I finished and sold it, and then it came out in 2008. So five years to write it, basically. Or figure out how to write it.
So one more question here before we actually turn to your book. It's like, and can you remember just kind of, was there anything surprising that you learned about writing the novel that you hadn't learned as a journalist?
I think I was surprised by how much garbage you generate. When you're writing a novel, you know, half of writing is just you know, throwing darts at a board and trying to figure out which ones land and make sense. And so I still to this day have to remind myself that, like, it's you can write garbage and throw it away, and in the process of writing garbage, you will find the thing that survives. But you know, you need to cut through all the crap you've written and find the thing, but you have to create the crap in order to find the thing. So that a lot of stuff goes in the trash, and that's okay.
So, but do you learn in the craft, and now you're at your 4th novel, and it just seems that your books are so beautifully plotted, and the characters are really strong, and they're clear. You know, it's like almost like the intention is always there. Did you learn stuff along the way? Like you go, these are the characters, or did you start to plan your books a different way?
Yeah, you know, I think that it's definitely been a big learning process. I've learned a lot more about structure. I've learned more about character and character arc and how important that is. And it's all been kind of self-taught. But my best teachers are other books. I read voraciously, And if I find a book that I think is really well done, that surprises me, that has characters that really grab me, I'll reread it a couple times and put stickies and jot notes. I've broken down books, like just gone through them and wrote down how, like what happens at different times so I can get a picture of how it's been mapped. So like do book maps. I have a little bit less of that now, but I did that a lot between books, 2 and 3, I think, when I felt like, oh, I've published, but what am I doing? Do I really know what I'm doing? I'm not sure I do. But yeah, I feel like it's constantly a learning process. It's constantly, there's always so much more. You can always be better, right?
And and is there an example of one of those books that you stickied?
Yes, a couple of them. Well, Gone Girl, I stickied. I think that's a masterpiece of storytelling, and I love that book. The Goldfinch. I recently restickied The Goldfinch. That was a great structural book. Early on, I wrote my first 2 books were much more Jonathan Franzen-y, and I reread a lot of Zadie Smith and On Beauty and the Corrections by Jonathan Franzen was another one. Those are 4 that I've read like 3-4 times each. So.
Well, that's fascinating, and it's good for people to know the craft. So now to your latest book, Pretty Things. What was the original idea? There it is. It just came out on April, and it's
21st. Yes,
the 21st, just right in the middle of the pandemic. What was that like for
in the
you?
middle.
What was that like for you?
Well, put it this way, I saw it in a bookstore for the first time last week, 2 months after it had come out. Skylight Books is my local bookstore, and they emailed that they were opening their doors, and I was like there the first thing the next day with my kids in tow. I was like, we're buying books, and I'm going to sign stock, and there was my book. It was exciting. Yeah, it's been a little strange. It's surreal. It's a strange time to have a book out. People are reading more than ever, and there's more contact than ever thanks to social media. Like I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter and Facebook, and I'm having more interaction with my readers than I ever have before. Also because you can do events like this and people can come from all around the country. And we've this is kind of a new exciting aspect of pandemic. It's like, oh, the virtual event, why didn't we do this before? Right. But yeah, there's also a strange sense it's harder to reach readers. The readers aren't walking into a bookstore and seeing your book in the new book display. And so it's a little harder to find people. And also I miss bookstores. I miss my bookseller friends.
Yeah, so fantastic. And there are heroes in this time. So how did the idea for Pretty Things come to you first? What was the genesis of this book?
It came from a couple different places. I love con artists and grifters, and I've always wanted to write a book about one. And so that's kind of been a thing that I've been sitting on for a long time, like waiting for the right idea. And then kind of what happened, there were a couple different things but the main one was Kim Kardashian. Kim Kardashian wrote my book. Kim Kardashian, a couple years back, was in Paris, and she got held up by jewel thieves. If anyone remembers this, they broke into her. They actually didn't break in. They dressed up as policemen. They knocked on her door, forced their way in, and held her up at gunpoint and stole her jewels. She had a lot of very expensive jewelry, not surprisingly. So the reason that they found her and knew was they've been tracking her on Instagram, right? They've been following her on Instagram, seeing her posts, and pieced together from clues in her photos where she was staying, what jewels, what bling she'd brought with her to Paris. And then that's how they targeted her. And I was fascinated by that. I was like, what? We all are on social media now, right? We're all posting our lives on social media. But unless you're fully private and not, when the only people following you are your family, you don't know who's watching you. You don't know what you're giving away that you're currently doing. You don't know what the intentions are of the people who are following you. And as someone who's actually been stalked in the past, that's kind of front of mind, right? And then this Kim Kardashian story. So I started to kind of piece together, like if I was a kind of a modern con artist now, I would be using this. I would be using this material, and especially these kind of influencers, which are out there flashing their lavish lifestyle, and they're, like on the yacht, and they're got their Gucci bag. And I was like, what if I was a con artist who kind of had it out for you know, the privilege of this world, I would totally be using social media in the way that those jewel thieves did. And I would be targeting, you know, figuring out how to infiltrate people's lives by following them on Instagram, getting to know them, getting to know what they own, but also getting to know their weaknesses. Like what you learn a lot about a person, right? What are they trying to prove about themselves by being on Instagram? And that's how I move into their life. And so that's how I came up with the idea of Nina, the con artist.
And Vanessa also is like the counterpoint to, there's a great duality between these two kind of different characters. I mean, I think that, and now of course it is being made into an Amazon series, Nicole Kidman, which you can talk about in a moment. I mean, I think that you've said that Hollywood values in stories isn't always the same as publishing values in stories. Mm-hmm. And you're writing the pilot for this. So are you aware of, here's how it works as a book, this is what I have to leave behind as a book to make the pilot, and this is what I'm obviously it's a very colorful and fast moving world, but what do you think when you're working on the pilot?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It's an education all the time. You know, I've done some screenplays in the past, and it's constantly a learning process. You know, what we value, as you know, what critics value in publishing is sometimes different from what readers value in publishing, but is, you know, the internal, the meditative, the building of the character, the, you know, beautiful flowery passages of prose, the like artfully constructed sentence. Other than character is obviously very important in both genres. All that stuff is not really quite relevant in writing a screenplay. I mean, you're going to get a director and they're going to do their own beautiful imagery and they're a great DP, but the internal has to be externalized, right? And so everything that happens inside your character's head, you have to find a way to make that happen in action or in dialogue. And that's hard. It's a different beast. And also, you know, if you're talking about doing a TV show with 8 or 10 or 13 episodes, how many books have that much action in them? Not that many. You know, you have to find a lot. There's a lot more things that have to happen. And even, you know, my book has a lot of action in it. And yet, even as I'm breaking it apart right now, I'm like, wow, I need to add more. More stuff needs to happen. But if I had put that stuff in a book, I'd have a 1,000-page book, and then no one would want to read it.
But everybody wants to read your books because they're so fantastic. Well, if only we had more time. But they look for it. Janelle's new book is Pretty Things. It's been out since April. You can go get it, and also it's going to be a series of Amazon with Nicole Kidman. So thank you so much. So interesting, and thank you. To the next. Okay. Thank you so much. Next up, we have Elle Johnson. Welcome, and here's your 30-second download, and you can correct me as we go. So, and I tell the biography in a slightly different way, and you'll see it was like, raised in Queens, a graduate of Harvard, Elle Johnson is a TV writer and producer whose credits include, among many other things, CSI Miami, Law and Order, and executive producing the Amazon series Bosch. Why such success with all the gritty police drama? We'll ask Elle. See, that's why she's getting ready. Currently, Elle is a co-showrunner of Netflix's Self-Made, inspired by the life of Madam C.J. Walker, starring Octavia Spencer and Tiffany Haddish. A truly groundbreaking show, Self-Made tells the story, if you haven't seen it, and you must, of an African-American washerwoman who rises from poverty to found a hair care empire, making her America's first self-made female billionaire. Welcome, Elle.
Hi, thank you, Sandra. So nice to be here.
It's nice to see you. Okay, so and you knew this was coming. From Bosch to self-made is quite a leap, at least on paper. So I wanted to ask you a bit about your expertise in cop shows and why that was.
Well, I come from a law enforcement family. My dad was a parole officer. My uncle was a homicide detective in New York. And so I've always kind of gravitated towards those kinds of stories. So the bulk of my career in television has been writing cop shows for the most part. But I do dip in and out and do some character-driven pieces, which is how I kind of landed with Self-Made.
So can you tell a little bit of the story of how Self-Made came to you, or you came to it?
Yeah, I mean, and it's interesting because between Bosch and Self-Made, I think it's perfect for this forum because they're both adapted to television from books. You know, Bosch is based on the Michael Connelly series of books, and Self-Made is based on a book called On Her Own Ground by the great granddaughter of Madam C.J. Walker. And I came to the Self-Made project kind of late in the process. That book had been around for about 20 years and had been optioned, and many people had tried to make it before the team that ended up putting it together got it on air. And I was brought on to do what's called being a showrunner, a co-showrunner, because the woman who had been hired to adapt the book was somebody who'd worked in independent film and done a lot of biographical films, but she hadn't really worked a lot in television. So I was brought on along with another woman to kind of help shepherd the process from not only just adapting this book to a limited television series, but you know, from somebody who hadn't really worked in TV, which is very different from screenplays. Film and TV are really different animals.
And for those who don't know who are pretending to know what it is, but they might not, could you tell the viewers what is a showrunner?
Yeah, a showrunner is basically, you know, a writer, an executive producer. In television, a lot of the producer titles are writers because TV is predominantly run by writers. So that is the person who is the head writer and the person who kind of just makes all of the bottom line decisions about casting, production, who's going to be hired, and more importantly, the storylines that you're going to tell, how you're going to craft the series, how you are telling the stories, you know, thematically what you're doing with the stories and deciding every episode and character arcs. And you're responsible basically for just the vision of the show and making sure that vision stays on track.
Right, and I think what Janelle is saying about translating her book to a series, where it's kind of like that's such a different animal when you have episode to episode, especially when people are binge watching now, to make it really want to go.
Well, it's different now because I also started in like network television when every year you would do, you know, on Law and Order, we would sometimes do 24, 26 episodes a year. Versus now a show like Self-Made was only 4 episodes, or Bosch is only 10 episodes. It's a lot. It's very exhausting doing a network show and trying to generate all that story. But it's also different from doing a series versus a limited series. Like Self-Made being a limited series, we only had 4 episodes in which to squeeze this kind of epic life and, you know, really get kind of the tone of her story just in 4 episodes. Versus when you have an ongoing series, you can explore that over multiple episodes. So you're not trying to like condense it down as much.
So, but you've talked about when making it a really entertaining and visceral and like very watchable TV series, what happens what do you have to do translating something that's historical, right?
Yeah, I mean, and it's interesting because I think, you know, the woman who kind of created the idea for the show and myself and the other co-showrunner on it, we were really wanting to make sure that this was not homework. You know, when you're dealing with a historical figure, particularly an African-American figure, you know, you don't want to be pigeonholed into that, well, it's February and it's Black History Month, so you got to watch Madam C.J. Walker. We wanted to make sure that this didn't feel like it was homework, that it was something that a contemporary audience and even beyond the people who knew who Madam C.J. was, that people would be engaged with this and trying to take a historical figure and make her really feel, you know, like the innovator that she was. And that kind of really influenced our decision-making process in terms of the stories that we told about her, how we looked at the material and the things that we wanted to say on the page to make it more visual. I mean, one of the things about Madam C.J. was she really was ahead of her time. She was the first not only African-American, but female millionaire in America in 1919. So this was a woman who was ahead of her time, and we wanted visually to portray that as well, to really show that this was somebody who was not stuck in a historical time period. And we kind of use interstitials and a little bit of magical realism to also convey the idea that this was somebody who thought out of the box, that she had a very vivid, inner life. And we wanted people to be able to see that. And we also translated that sonically by using contemporary music to, help augment the storytelling, that we felt like this is a woman, even in her time period, she listened to opera, she had access to, contemporary music. Ragtime was the music of the day, which was considered, completely forward thinking. So we felt like it was a fair jump to, instead of using, period music, to use contemporary music. So in looking at the book, we tried to translate that theme for us of her being an innovator into every aspect of how we did the show.
Yeah, because it doesn't feel like a historical PBS series with the kind of like the Ken Burns banjo music, like whatever. It does feel really fresh and visceral, and the characters are so great, and the actors are so fantastic. Yeah,
that makes a huge difference. I mean, and also something else that we were talking about earlier, Sandra, is when you're looking at a book, and this is true for the Bosch books as well. But when you look at a book and what's written in prose, sometimes you read something and you think, I can't really put that on the screen because it's going to be too true to be good. It's like, it just won't work. It'll work when you're reading it. You might enjoy reading it, and it's a different experience for the reader, but for the audience who's sitting there watching it, it just doesn't translate. And in Madam CJ, there was a fantastic story, true life story, about how Madam had a gun. She carried a gun around, and she actually caught her husband cheating at a hotel with another woman, and that she stood outside of his door and made the decision not to go in and kill him and the mistress, because she had a bigger plan. She had a business to run. She didn't want to ruin her life. And we love that as a story, but we're like, too true to be good. Like, it's just, it just will look out of place. We can't do it. So we find other ways to tell that story, but just leaving that detail out, because that's going to take people out of it in a way.
Right. I mean, and you've talked about this being a key time, obviously, with the national conversation that's happening about racial inequity finally coming to the fore, that this is really a time, like a key time for Hollywood producers to greenlight more, stories about African-American women in history. And
yes. And there's so many of them. It's amazing. Like, there's just so many untold stories that are now, I think executives are certainly more open to hearing them and knowing that audiences are going to find those stories and find them compelling, and that they'll be able to relate. So I think it's an exciting time.
Right. And if you were producing them, of course, I mean, I think that's the fresh part of it, that they wouldn't be the homework. And I think that's the fantastic thing about exploring these stories and being able to just tell people in all their glory and all their rivalries, which is so fun. So if you haven't seen Self-Made, it is just juicy and fun and interesting and moving, and it really has all those colors to it. It's not homework at all.
Yeah, and I feel like when you're adopting something, particularly, it's different because of Janelle's book. She wrote it and she's getting to write the pilot. But if you haven't written the book, for me as a television writer, when people bring projects to me or when I'm asked to look at development, I'm not just taking dictation. Like, I'm not just going to take what's on the page and put it exactly into a television script. There has to be something in it that speaks to me as an artist, that makes me excited about retelling this story, that gives me kind of purchase in a way that I can get into it, that I'm going to be able to bring a part of myself to it. And, certainly there was so much in the story of Madam C.J. Walker that I think as an African-American woman, I was excited to really kind of tell her story and let people see what a badass she was. But I think when you're looking at a piece of IP, which is, intellectual property, which is how everyone refers to any piece of prose or something that comes before you adapt it. When you're looking at a piece of IP, it's really important as a writer to find something that I personally connect with, so that, because it's so hard to do these projects. I mean, it takes a lot of effort. So you really have to be passionate about it and really love the material and really feel like you want to tell this story.
Well, thank you so much, Elle Johnson. Her newest series is Self-Made, inspired by the life of Madam C.J. Walker. It's fascinating. It's entertaining. It's not a chore. It's hopefully the next wave in new stories with new diverse characters that will be.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And find it on Netflix. Finally, in this hour, we have a pair of guests, two guests, W. Bruce Cameron and Cathryn Michon. You know, we used to do the 30-second download, but for two of you, we're going to jump to a 60-second download, a two-part. Okay. Oh my gosh. And then you have the dog too in the screen. So I'm going to worry about it. Okay. So I'm going to start with the first part of the download, which is W. Bruce Cameron began writing a family newspaper humor column. Remember those? You might have heard of it. 8 Simple Rules for Dating My Teenage Daughter. It became a New York Times bestselling book and a hit ABC series starring the late, great John Ritter. He's perhaps best known, though, as the New York Times bestselling author of a book series, A Dog's Purpose. So he and his wife, Cathryn, who we're going to also meet, co-wrote the movie, which is currently, I love this, the most successful international live-action dog movie of all time. Take that Benji, take that Beethoven, take that Milo and Otis, even though only one of you is a dog. Okay. Okay, and this sparked the 2 sequels, A Dog's Way Home and A Dog's Journey. His latest book, A Dog's Purpose 3, I believe that's the latest one, is A Dog's Promise. His Lily to the Rescue, okay, there it is. And his Lily to the Rescue books, you can we're gonna be holding up a lot of books, is a huge Scholastic Book Fair favorite. So it's Bruce's world, live in it. Okay. Now, Samantha, you jump in and interrupt me.
Yes. Oh, sorry. I missed my cue. This is why I'm not an actor. So it happens that Bruce married one of our dear friends, Cathryn Michon, who, okay, let's just talk a little bit about Cathryn, separate from Bruce for a minute. She is multi-talented. She, as a stand-up comedian, created the show The Girl Genius Club, and as an author, wrote the subsequent novel, The Girl Genius Guide to Life, which I love. I wish, are you holding it up?
I am.
You know,
okay, she's doing it for me.
And that led to a television hosting stint on AMC's similarly titled Girl Genius at the Movies, and a second novel, The Girl Genius Guide to Sex with Other People. Her TV writing credits are many, but they include Designing Women, China Beach, Sisters, South Park, love that, and Diagnosis Murder, and Wait. In addition to writing and producing with Bruce and doing all this other stuff, she wrote, directed, and starred in the independent movies Cook Off and Muffin Top. And if you haven't seen them, you are in for some laughs.
Hilarious. And although Sam is technically my boss in this venture, I'm going to cut her off and not let her answer this question because she could do the whole Cathryn and Bruce story. But you know what? That's why we have guests. So you two in your box, can you tell us and the viewers how you guys met?
Well, we met on a little thing called book tour, which we're not doing anymore.
It wasn't a Zoom meeting.
It wasn't a Zoom meeting. We were in real life. We both were on book tour. I was on book tour for The Girl Genius Guide to Life, and he was doing 8 Simple Rules. And we were in a talk show on a PBS station in Seattle, and it was very poorly run, and they were trying to shoot a bunch of episodes all at once. And we basically got locked in a green room together for 3 hours because we were waiting and waiting. And I was divorced, he was divorced, and I was just one of those people that I had such bad taste in men that I've always said, God just locked me in a room with a really nice man for 3 hours, and then it kind of worked out.
Is that your version, Bruce?
No, yours is totally different.
Yeah, I think she had Stockholm syndrome because we were like, I was holding her hostage in this room. I wouldn't let her leave the room because I knew if she leaves the room, she's going to find some other guy. But right now, I'm the only guy. The best odds I've ever had.
Okay.
Different cities, and then 8 Simple Rules got picked up to be a series, and he moved to LA, and it really, I still put it down to God. I still think God really helped me out. I can't. That's my bottom line.
So, and Samantha, you were telling a story. Okay, I'll let Samantha talk for a moment about the genesis of the dog series, the Dog Purpose series. Okay,
I just
started off.
Okay, I just have to share this. I share this all the time. This is more than 10 years ago. Bruce had sent me a galley, which is the draft of the book before it goes to publication. And because we're friends, he married my friend. What can I say? And I was working, it was on my desk. My mother who made the the top of the hour. She was wandering into my office and she comes in with her cigarette. She goes, "What do you got to read around here?" And I said, "Well, you know, my friend Bruce, he's a great storyteller. You probably would like this. I haven't started it yet." She takes it, she reads it, she loves it. She comes to me and she says, "Why can't you write a book like this? This is going to be a..."
The story always breaks my heart. I just always...
And can you tell about the genesis of that book?
Yeah, I can do that. But first, I want to say something, which is I'm so honored to be here, and I feel like I'm in such august company. If that's still...
I know. I feel like we shouldn't be talking. Like I have a limited series and a new novel to read. Like I'm very busy.
No, I'm feeling like I'm so honored, and I was sitting here thinking, God, I feel like such an idiot. I haven't accomplished anything, and feel so stupid. And then I realized, oh, it's because I'm the only man.
Attractive that is.
So. Yeah, so Cathryn Michon and I were dating, and we were driving from LA up the coast to the Bay Area to meet her parents. And I had gotten kind of serious about this woman, and because I hadn't yet met her parents. And we're driving, and she turns to me like halfway up, and just out of the blue says, "I will never have another dog," because her dog had died. And you know how horrible that is. It was the only time she'd ever had a dog, and she said, "I can't do that again." And I'm thinking, deal breaker. I'm thinking, okay, now you tell me. Now I'm thinking I'm going to let her out at the next gas station, because there's no way I'm going to go through life without a dog. And I have a sense that maybe I'm like a lot of people on the Zoom right now. When I want to make a point, sometimes I'll tell a story. And in this case, I decided to tell her a story about a dog who reincarnates and remembers each life and keeps coming back in order to learn life lessons that helps this dog find and save his original boy. And what I really wanted to tell her is that she would just open her heart. The same love that she had felt from her dog was out there for her. She just had to let it come. Let her come and scratch at her door, you know? And she loved the story so much that she married me. And she said to me, "You're gonna have to write that as a book."
You know, since we're all writers talking, it was really an unusual thing because he really was just making it up. He was just making up this story. But we're driving up the 101, and it's like it was like his one-man show, and that's never really happened before or since. He knew the story just came to him, and when he finished, like any feeling sentient being at the end of A Dog's Purpose, I was sobbing, and I said, "You're going to have to write that as a book. It's so beautiful. I get what you're saying. I get why you're telling me the story, but it was kind of an unusual experience."
I'm crying because it's so sad about the dog, and also that I hate you so much, Bruce, that you came up with that on a car. I mean, it's kind of, who does that? Who does that? Okay, but you guys then went on to work together. We would like to know how that works.
Well, first, we got all the weapons out of the house.
The gun, the hatchet,
right. When we started screenwriting together, and we've made a couple of independent movies that I directed, as you mentioned, Cook Off, which is
it's hilarious. It's hilarious.
It's on Amazon Prime. You can see it for free. It's got
hilarious.
Like every comedy person you've ever heard of. It's basically Best in Show at the Pillsbury Bay.
It is.
But anyway, when we start to do that project, we're like, oh, we're gonna write, a movie together and produce a movie together. And also we'd like to stay together. So we went to a marriage counselor, and we set out what the rules of our partnership are as screenwriters and filmmakers, because like literally coming down to things that when it's his project, when it's A Dog's Purpose, it comes from his IP, he has the final vote. Cook Off and Muffin Top were my IP. And so I had the final vote. And when you think about it, if you're in a partnership, if it's a dead heat and you just are not agreeing, then the partnership can end. Like that's really the only way you break the tie. So we didn't want that to happen,
Was that the only rule? Were there other rules? Everybody wants
there's tons of rules. Oh, no,
okay.
no.
Give a couple more. We all want to know. This is good stuff.
You know, I think one of her rules is if I disagree with her, she'll just talk more and more loudly until I understand.
That's not a formal rule, but it does happen. No, but it's more things like, you know, we each get a deferral. Like it's like this is a after wrap conversation. Like there's some we get to put space in things, you know, because making a film, as you guys know, is like, it's such an intense process.
Well, yeah, it's especially intense when it's when we're doing one of Cathryn's indie projects, and she's the director, she's a producer, and she's an actor and a writer. And so I feel like I'm in a team room when it's just the two of us talking.
Yeah.
And it's tense because, you know, you're making it for a nickel and a sandwich. And so you've got to make a decision like that. And we do have code words that we've set up for each other.
Yeah.
Some of them meaning we need to step out of the room for a minute,
Yeah.
because you know I'm looking at the clock and saying we're running out of money, and she's looking at the clock and saying we got to get this scene. It's amazing how many conflicts that you run into in a situation like that, and yet we've managed to muddle through it.
But I so treasure the indie stuff that we've done, because I mean, I worked on network TV too, where you have to do 10,000 episodes a year, and like I do know what that's like. But there's always all this money to solve problems. I think for me as a filmmaker, having to make a movie for a nickel and a sandwich, I feel like that was my real film school. Like that's where I really learned to make creative choices. Perfect example. This is a silly example. In the movie Cook Off, there's the finals. It's called the Ring of Fire, and it's a ring of ovens, you know, on the competition floor. And we had a set carpenter who literally stayed up 2 nights to build this thing in the space that we had rented for the location. And when we got to shooting the scene, we realized that he hadn't put it in any way for the people to get in. There was supposed to be a door, and he forgot to put the door in. So we're like, how are the people going to get into the Ring of Fire? Like, and then that, you know, and in network TV, we would stop and get more carpenters and we'd build a door. And I'm like, oh no, it'll be so much funnier if you have these housewives like crawling over the ovens to try and get in because there's no door. And it is funnier. So it's like, that's the kind of things you learn by not having big production money, which is not what the Dog's Purpose movies are. I mean, those are expensive movies.
And I'm just wondering when your movie next, Cathryn, is going to be about the making of a low budget movie with the ring, like the whole waiting for Guffman, that thing of like this couple trying to do that. Just before we go back, so when Cathryn is like acting and producing and doing this, so Bruce, like you're there, but is there the husband, at some point you go, oh, now I play the part of the husband? Like at the end of the day, I'm kind of like, because you can't complain about your boss.
He's always auditioning for that part.
Yeah, right. Right. I had to get a new contract every morning for that role. I'm not sure if I understand the question, but I will say that she put me in. I had a scene, a speaking scene in both movies. In the second one, Muffin Top, I had a pretty good scene, and I got cut from the movie, and I was sleeping with the director. When does that happen?
No.
That's the reason for the question, just to get to that joke.
He's very good in Cook Off, though.
Yeah. My dog made the cut, so my dog is a better actor than I am. And by the way, my role was man in a bar. Had a lot of practice. I can bring authenticity to that role.
Well, and I would wonder, so what would be the next dream project for the both of you to be working on together? You've worked with, you know, on all these different things. What's the
well, we have stuff in development. We have 2 movies actually at Amblin right now. We're writing the screenplay for this right now. But you know, it's weird for filmmakers right now when there's a vaccine. I have a movie that I'm going to direct that's all about the world of Christian television called Gold Cross Network that I'm very excited about, but we can't make that movie right now.
So Samantha, you are there. You have a question? Because I feel like I've been hogging this whole thing. I've just been like going like this and like this.
I'm over here on the chats and the questions, and we do have a question. Is Muffin Top also on? Is it on Amazon?
Yes, it is on Amazon. It's on lots of streaming platforms. Both Muffin Top and Cook Off are pretty much everywhere.
And so we can also find A Dog's Purpose. We can also find the other movies also on streaming.
A Dog's Purpose, A Dog's Journey, A Dog's Way Home. Every one of those 3 studio movies is out on home video. And this is a compliment to me. I think people are really watching these movies during COVID because it's like, dogs are just so great and they make you feel better, and we get a lot of really cool feedback from people watching those movies, reading the books too, of course, but it's just I don't know, it seems to be a place where people are comfortable at this time.
And go ahead.
One other question from the audience, I thought, and then I'll shut up. We did have a question asking about working with animals. How hard is that?
Oh, it's great.
Set.
Oh no, it's so great. I mean, it's like I've worked on a lot of different kinds of shows and movies and things, and to just, first of all, you're really not allowed to make out with all the co-stars on a film, really. It's not proper. But
yeah.
We just get
Dennis Quaid turned me down flat.
But no, it's just, we work with these animal trainers. It's very important to us. We're animal advocates. We only work with the kind of trainers who use love, praise, and affection. A dog never gets yelled at on our set. They don't even know what the word no means. It's very important to us that we create the new paradigm for ethical filmmaking with animals. And so we work with, people like Teresa Miller, Bonnie Judd, our people who have been our lead trainers on movies. And I mean, we rescued a dog from Tennessee that was like she was in a landfill. Yeah. She was a stray dog, and she's the star of A Dog's Way Home, Shelby. And Teresa Miller it's literally, like a 40s Hollywood story, from the junkyard to being a movie star. But I mean, the fact that she could do that with that kind of a dog, it just shows you how, those people are the real stars of those movies. I have to say, those animal trainers are amazing.
Samantha, do you mind if I interrupt the actual audience questions with another fangirl one of my own? I think I seem to remember, although it seems so distant in pre-COVID times, it seems, is it something that surreally I remember, that when Muffin Top opened, I think that you had these really fun premieres of women, because I think this movie actually is very much, it's this woman's story, but it's everyone's story about what a movie premiere can look like if all kinds of women are celebrated. Am I remembering that right?
You're so right. We did a Kickstarter. It was called The Red Carpet of True Beauty, and people would give money and want their town to have a red carpet premiere of Muffin Top. So we did like 10 cities, and Marissa Jarrett Winokur, who's in the movie, she won the Tony for Hairspray, and Melissa Peterman, and we went to these towns. But it wasn't a red carpet about us. It was like a red carpet about the audience, So all these, because the movie had this thing of, love yourself now, not 5 pounds from now, like accepting your actual beauty as a woman. And it was the most fun thing. And people would come dressed up however they thought they should be on a red carpet. So instead of like the normal red carpet, it was sweet. It was really fun.
That's so moving. And then that's something, the way, movies, if they're made by women with a certain vision and a certain way of rolling it out, I just think that's so inspiring and so super fun.
Also, we had more women in front of and behind the camera on Muffin Top than any other independent feature in like the previous 5 years. And it's interesting. I didn't set out to do that. I just know so many talented women who are underemployed in this business. So, I had my head of Soundpost, all of my camera operators were women, costumes, everything. Pretty much every department head was a woman. It was just because, Hollywood is so sexist. They're also racist, but a lot going on.
And then your dream, you did get to make out with a dog in that movie, didn't you?
Yes, my own dog, the only dog I have. Tucker is in Muffin Top.
Oh, yes. Oh. So, Samantha, there was another audience question. Yes.
We have answered all of the legitimate questions. Now we just want to know, Bruce, Bruce, tell us a secret about Cathryn that we've never heard before. That's actually a question from me.
What?
All the other panelists are going, thank God.
I just can't imagine answering that question. You could have thumb screws on me, you could be waterboarding me, and I'd spit the water out and say, I'm still not going to answer that question. Oh, there must be. Okay. She has a shoe for every foot in America. And it really, she built a nice closet, and then she put the shoes in it, and then there was no closet. It was just shoes. And so that's a secret about Cathryn.
Well, we have a comment that says this is a great marriage. So whatever it is you're doing it well. Sandra, back to you. Do you have anything else?
I do. I actually have just one final question, and it's been such I just want to thank all of our panelists. It's been so terrific. And then Sam, you will come in at the end and remind everyone of all the books and where to find them. And I think, let me say that in my own journey in Los Angeles and being a journalist, that sometimes I wrote for Buzz magazine back in the day. So there would be, and I was born Lutheran, but semi-non-practicing. My brother's a Christian. My sister was like, you know, and so sometimes there can be a kind of a dialogue between what is Christian and non-Christian and whatever. And I just think that these movies are so beautiful, and that, you know, that Christianity is part of, and religion is part of the journey and the conversation in such a really embracing way. And I think that is
because we happen to be Christian, but we were surprised that people of all different faiths really embrace. You know, it's a reincarnating dog who remembers all of his lives. You know, so like that isn't anybody's religion, really. And then everybody just kind of got the bigger message. You know, that connectedness. You know.
Yeah, and I think that's so beautiful. It's just that it's such a universal message, and it's, you know, rooted in such great spirituality either way. So I just wanted to put that out there because I really appreciate that. All right. You went from shoes to God, so I think
that's a good progression. Soup to nuts, shoes to God. I think
shoes to God. Dead horses, dead mothers. Yeah, we did it. And
in the chat, everyone, I have given links for books and for TV shows and for the websites of our esteemed guest. I just want to say thank you, everybody. Thank you to my buddy and our esteemed hostess, Sandra Tsing Loh, which, by the way, I forgot to mention.
Sandra Tsing Loh has a new book out, which I just finished reading.
Well, thank you.
Fantastic. The Mad Woman and the Roomba, and everyone should buy it and read it.
And the New York Times just mentioned it as one of the best summer reads. So I just want to to you. Thank you, everyone. Next week, we are actually going to be on vacation, which I hope you are too. We'll be back July 10th. We'll be talking about mystery and crime. And we have fabulous guests, which you can see on the screen. And we might have a few drop-ins. If you have been on this episode before, you know sometimes we have other fabulous drop-ins. So, so sign up and be back. And thank you, everyone. This was fabulous.
Thank you so much. This was great. Thank you, Sandra.
Really fun.
Thank you. Thank you, Janelle, Elle, Bruce, and
Cathryn.
Bye, everybody.